accepted.
Week of CCDC bootcamps. This week we're going to be getting down to business. So here's a breakdown of our cyber bootcamp schedule. This is actually our first hands-on, actually doing cyber stuff week. So hopefully everybody has a little bit more fun and gets to know the competition a lot better. But yeah. So first off, a little introduction about myself. My name is Jessica, or as people around here like to call me, Justice H. I'm the CCDC business team lead, and I have been for the past year. So this is my second year, is what I'm trying to say. And I was formerly on the Windows team, and I am now also the co-president of Swift, and I'm also currently pen testing at Visa. I'm very sad not to be able to join everyone here in real time, I guess. But Marshall and Sydney are amazing, and you guys are in really good hands. So please feel free to, ask questions and stuff, and they're going to take good care of you. But yeah, let me hand it off to Marshall for a self-introduction.
Hey, if you were here last presentation, you'll be familiar with me, and it'll be a very similar format. But yeah, I'm a third-year computer engineering major, and for CCDC, I'm the threat hunter. I was the alternate threat hunter last year, and now I'm the threat hunter this year.
And hi again, I'm Sydney. This year I'm gonna be with the business team for CCDC, and last year I was an alternate. I'm also external vice president for Swift, and I work at the PMO office for LA City Hall.
All right, so here's the table of contents. We're gonna first be going over why are we talking about business in a cybersecurity competition? And then we're going to go over this thing called injects, which are, the tasks that we are handed to complete throughout the duration of the competition. Then we're going to be talking about forced vacations. Make of it what you will for now, and we'll be going over it later. Finally, we have a lab portion where everybody gets to kind of see a snippet into what we expect as a business team member in the team. What are some tasks that we have to do, and see how you guys like it. But yeah, let's get started. So yes, I know what you're thinking. This is a cybersecurity competition. I thought I signed up, to do technical things. Why are we here talking about business? Well, business is a really important part of cybersecurity, or rather, cybersecurity is a really important part of business, as we serve as a function of business to protect the business and its interests and its assets, right? We are there to make sure that the company, everything's running smoothly. We're not losing money, and we're not, losing reputation. And so without business, cybersecurity would not exist. But if that was not enough to convince you, here is a score breakdown of national CCDC. 20% of our score came from our orange team points. The next 40 came from our service uptime. So that's like, making sure that there are no, red marks across our scoreboard, right? But the last 40%, that entire 40% comes from business injects. I know. Crazy, right? You thought this was a cyber defense competition. 40% of it came from business tasks. Well, so with that said, let's go on to talk about why, business is important. So before we get started, let's talk about, the fundamental principles of cybersecurity. The CIA triad, as people like to call it: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These are the three main pillars that we have to uphold as cybersecurity professionals to ensure that, none of our information, our PII, is accessible. so that we don't incur reputational damage. We want to make sure that, you know, our assets cannot be removed by other people or altered, right? And that we are able to support the business as best as we can to keep, you know, all of our business function running as smoothly as possible on a daily basis, right? In other words, in the context of a business, confidentiality affects our reputational damage, right? That protects reputational damage, right? For example, if all of our information got put on, was sold, all of our customer data is sold on the black market, you know, that doesn't really look or reflect well on our company. For integrity, right? Like, we don't want to lose business critical information. We don't want to, um, you know, have that affect, um, I guess, our products and the way that we function as a business. And we don't want interruptions to our normal business function, right? We are there to protect this daily normal operations, and that is our goal. We have to uphold that. In other words, the risk of an interruption to business is the biggest reason of why we are hired as cybersecurity professionals, right? And so as a result, we have an obligation to support the business, which is really where this business team role kind of comes in. And it's a lot more challenging than you think, you know. The competition throws infinite curveballs at us. You know, we were told that we were going to be able to use G Suite and then showed up to regionals. Nope. Sorry, guys. We forgot to give you guys accounts. No G Suite. And then they just made it an official thing. And so, you know, my entire business plan was based off of that. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Very, very fun time. There's actually a lot of technical tasks as well. Not only like, you know, writing a technical analysis on or assessment on situations, but also going in and, for example, explaining a product that we would, for example, comparing and contrasting different products we can go with and what best suits our needs and our network. And, for example, writing about, you know, certain risks that we are facing as a business, right? But also from a technical perspective, like what we have to do to mitigate those risks, and, you know, whether it's realistic or not. And then you need, so like in general, you need a really broad understanding of, you know, the entire function of cybersecurity, um, and especially in the context of a business. Like, what are some things that, you know, we have to maintain as a team to ensure that, you know, we can best support business operations. Um, uh, Try to propose solutions at the least amount of cost to the business, um, or at the least impact towards, you know, normal business function, but also finding that balance so that, you know, we're still doing our due diligence and being as safe as we can, right? And then sometimes they even like make us talk about stuff like cloud, right? There's a bunch of, or like, you know, paid tools, different solutions, and weird curveball scenarios. So, you know, no day is the same. You know, every day is different with um, here on the CCDC business team. Next, we're going to talk about injects. When you think injects, maybe you're thinking injection, but no, it's really called an inject because they just come in. They're like, hey, I know you're busy right now, but we need this task done, and you're just gonna have to go, okay, thanks. I guess I'll handle it. And so, yeah, they just kind of come in unannounced, and it's very inconvenient, but it is part of, you know, what we have to deal with as the business team. So, what is an inject, right? It is a task handed down to us by, you know, business executives or, you know, upper management, that kind of thing. They're just like, hey guys, we just hired a new security analyst, you know, give them, you know, administrative permissions. Uh, or some guy just got fired last week. Can you go in and do forensics, make sure, you know, he wasn't the one leaking all of our proprietary information and stuff like that. Usually you would have to complete these injects within an hour, so complete the tasks that they have assigned to you, but also complete a write-up on it. Kind of explain your thought process of, why you chose to do or implement the solution that you did. Or, right, kind of like the different steps that you took, different tools that you considered, or different solutions that you were considering, and why you ultimately chose to go with the path that you did. Um, but sometimes they also come in the form of like an infographic, like, oh, we want to make sure that, our employees are aware of this thing called cybersecurity. Can you please make some sort of infographic? And then there are presentations, which we're going to be talking about later, but they are so much fun. But yeah, here are a couple examples, right? Conduct a security assessment of our network, or recommend a cloud solution. We want to migrate some of our stuff to the cloud. What is the safest to do? What's the easiest to maintain? What is the most realistic for us to execute as a like 8-man team currently? Or writing writing policies, like a disaster recovery policy, password policy, that kind of stuff. Or, like I said earlier, create an infographic, right? So these are all things that we've come across as a CCDC business team. And a lot of the times that we won't have enough time to like do all of our tasks ourselves. So we'll have to like yank people in from like Linux team if, they're looking good, or from the Windows team if they're looking good and stuff. So anytime there's an extra set of hands, they're probably working on injects. And that's why, even if you're not planning on, doing CCDC business, or you're not sure about it yet, you're gonna have to learn and know how to do these things regardless. I'm really more of just like a project manager in this sense, like, hey, can you complete this inject? Hey, can you complete this inject? And just managing that while, our team members are actually the ones, going in and maybe applying the changes, or writing about what they've done. And so it's really a shared responsibility for the entire team. But
Just
so here's the secret sauce for writing a
just a bit more on why delegating off business is important. You're not getting one inject and then are focusing on that one inject. You're given multiple injects at a time, and you have to juggle all of them together. That is why you need to. That's why everyone needs to know a bit of business, because everyone has to work on the injects all together.
good inject, right? First, we want to be thorough. We don't want to leave any room for the judges, or in this case, in the simulation mindset, I guess, your boss, right? You don't really want your boss to receive some sort of proposal and go like, "Hey, I'm confused about this," or "I'm not really sure you actually told me everything you did," right? But in the context of like a judge, they're looking at a rubric and they're like, "Well, you kind of mentioned it, but did you really, do this?" Or did you really explain it to a point where it's satisfactory? Or can we really be sure that you know what you're talking about? And that's when they're like, I'm not going to give you the full points. And in CCDC, trust me, every point matters. So we want to be as thorough as we can. Um, I'm not saying like write, a 10-page essay about, the smallest little thing, but be sure to detail your thought process as best as you can, and in like short, concise sentences, so that people can read it and be like, okay, got it. This is what you did. This is your thought process. All right, move on. Check the box. Um, but yeah, second, use professional language, right? You're basically talking to your boss in the context of this simulation, right? Your manager is asking something of you, the CISO is asking something of you, or sometimes the executive board is asking something of you, and you don't want to be, saying, "Oh, what's up? Yeah, it's all good, taken care of. You know, I did the thing you told me to do." That's not really the attitude that you want to be approaching this with, right? You're literally writing a proposal to your boss, at the same time convincing them that you did the best job you could. Um, and so you want to present that entire package as clean and as wrapped up as possible, right? And finally, provide supporting evidence. I mean, this is a no-brainer, right? As you know, in all stages of you having to write, um, I guess, a paper to back anything up, evidence is always good. But in the context of this competition, it makes it really easy for the judges to just go, okay, I'm sure you did this and you provided me evidence. You're going above and beyond. I don't even have to look too hard. You get the points. But you just don't want to leave any room for doubt. And providing supporting evidence is usually as easy as just taking a screenshot of the config file, right? That kind of stuff. So it's like, why not? You know, it just adds credibility to your entire, you know, proposal or submission and just makes everything easier, makes everything better. So here's a little tip about being thorough, right? Usually we would try to write down certain things that, you know, the message is asking of us, right? Because it's kind of they're addressing us as like, hey, hello team, we have these issues, can you help us, blah blah blah. And then some of the asks are like written right there, you know, I need you to perform an audit. Okay, got it. But there are also some parts that were like, you know, I hope you were taking notes, and it's kind of hinting at you like, hey, these are some things that we want to see, and I want to see that like kind of change, from, you know, your, for example, in this case, um, from the initial inventory, um, inject to now removing unnecessary software and services. They want to see like, okay, what have you done, right? So really like getting in between the lines, reading in between the lines, providing that extra bit that they're not, you know, outwardly asking for, but really are. But also like once you get to know these injects a little bit more and work with them a little bit more, it becomes really easy to kind of discern like, okay, this is probably going to come up a little bit later. These are probably things that I should tell my team to look out for, um, and so that we can be prepared for it if and when an inject actually comes in asking for this information, right? For example, Swiss bank exchange, right? We can expect a lot of stuff to do with like, okay, um, what are some like sensitive pieces of information that we would be, you know, hosting, right? Or that would be in our possession. Or for example, like some policies that we'd have to abide by as we're working with financial information and stuff like that. So keeping your eyes out for little details like that and just like doing a mental preparation. And so when you're idle, you can also do some research about the things that you would be expecting, and also give your team a heads up so that they can be looking out for, like, for example, PII. Okay, hey Jess, I found this. Might be interesting. So you could keep a copy of it and you could refer to it as quickly as possible when you're really on that time crunch to finish that inject. So then here are some tips about, you know, using professional language. You want to address the recipient. You know, we're not just submitting like a bullet point page like of, oh, did this, did this, did this, here's a picture, submit, right? Um, Usually I try to format my injects really pretty, make the judges happy, but also it just like, it's that final touch, that professionalism. Um, but as you can see in this inject, they address you as like, hello team, and then they usually have like a, you would know like, oh, maybe Sebastian's the CEO or whatever. You would know that, from more, background information about the competition, right? So you would want to address them appropriately. Um, you want to take into account who your audience is, right? Sometimes it's, you know, your manager who's a, maybe a technical lead, then you can speak on more technical terms, right? You can offer, you know, reasons and logics, that are on a more technical side versus if, you know, for example, it is someone on the board of executives asking you for, um, a, to complete a task. You wouldn't really highlight like, oh, I did this because, you know, it, because this makes sense for our network. It's more like, hey, I did this because it saves our company more money. So you want to like target your audience intentionally. And obviously, that's not really something that they would like tell you to do, but it is all part of this simulation, right? All part of this competition. And right with intention. These judges are grading like hundreds of injects by the end of the competition. They're not gonna want to read through like your really extravagantly long like explanation of something. Like, no, they don't care. Just get to the point. Um, provide them enough information they need, to not doubt that you did what you did, and so that they have like no second thoughts. They're like, okay, perfect. They did what they did. Check it off. While also making sure you fully explain your thought process, but reaching that fine balance where you're not just, going off and going a little bit too deep into things. Don't use colloquial language. It is, that's self-explanatory. You wouldn't talk to your boss unprofessionally, and you shouldn't in this setting as well. Don't neglect formatting. Judges have said over and over again in past competitions that they absolutely hate it when they receive a large wall of text, or when formatting is very, just very all over the place, right? Very incoherent. It's like, oh, your header is indented and then your next header is bolded, or, um, you know, all of your fonts are different sizes, or there's random colors all over the page. Stuff like that, just really ticks off the judges. And so we want to make sure they look at our inject and they're like, okay, perfect, clean, concise. I love it. And then they're happy, you get a good grade, we can all move on, right? Finally, don't guess about the information that you're putting on your index. That can really bite you back later. Um, we've definitely gotten away a couple times of just like, low-key BSing our way through an inject, but generally speaking, you don't want to lie about what you're putting on your inject, especially when it's as easy as going like, hey team, just to confirm, this is, the current status of this thing. Um, or like, these are the things that we have applied right now, right? Or hey, let me know if you can't get to that. I'll just write about what we tried to do and why we couldn't meet those expectations, instead of being like, oh yeah, we got everything set up. We have centralized logging set up, perfect, everything's fine. And then they go ask for logs and you're like, haha, that's crazy. Why'd you ask? So you don't really want to be caught in those situations. So try to just confirm with the team. And a lot of this is like you would reach an understanding as a team, like, hey, it's worth it maybe to kind of, risk it a little bit, or okay, let's be honest, it's not really that big of a mistake anyway, and we could probably still get a lot of points, regardless of whether or not we completed the task fully, right? And then finally, providing supporting evidence. You're trying to convince people that you did the best job you can. So why not feed that and supplement that with like all the evidence that you could find, right? For example, if the inject is kind of talking about like, hey, what is the best XYZ solution for our situation right now? Prove that you did your research, right? Prove that you really like went in and tried to understand each product, and give that background information, right? Like, hey, I read about this thing happening to this solution. I don't think that this is something that we have to worry about because XYZ, or this really impacts our business, and so that's why, even though with all the other benefits, I don't think it's worth it for us to pursue this, right? So stuff like that. um More supporting evidence. You always want to find snippets of information that you can really stuff in there to prove your understanding of the subject. Um, for example, a big one um, with business is like, hey, how much would it cost to fix it? And how much would it cost us if we don't fix it and we got caught not fixing it, right? Providing estimates, or for example, a lot of like I guess like threat intelligence blogs and stuff, they'll come up they have like their annual thing where they're like, oh, estimated like $4 billion in losses in this industry, blah 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 blah. Like providing those things and relating it back to your scenario really like sends it over the next level. They're like, okay, wow, this is really something we need to be paying attention to because our industry lost a ton of money to this last year. Um, and for the competition, for the judges, they're like, okay, you really went that extra mile to try to relate this back to our scenario, and you're not just answering a question just because you have to answer it, right? Why did you choose that solution? Don't just give the why, but give the how did you get there, right? What other solutions did you consider, and stuff like that, right? How much does your solution cost? Always compare that to other things and try to like, pick the information that would, favor your choice. Obviously, we're still gonna be a little like smart about this, right? But especially if these are business executives, they love seeing numbers. That's the only thing they care about, the cost, right? So really feeding into that um, helps, bring everything together. And finally, who's going to implement your solution, right? This is not necessarily always needs to be mentioned, but sometimes it's like, okay, what do you propose? Well, when you're giving a proposal, you want to make sure you're very thorough. So, for example, you can say like, oh, we have an AWS expert on our team. They can take over handling this, I guess, migration, right, and stuff like that. Or rather, we don't really have anyone who's familiar with this process yet. So we might have to hire another person or might have to, take some trainings, blah, 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 right? Always show your work, right? You did the work already. Why don't you show it? Screenshots of, you know, I guess uh, your solution being applied, right? For example, oh, look, here's my firewall working. Screen logs, right? Um, like, uh, and then examples of, configs or scripts, right? I was like, here's what we did to get there. Here's what we did to pull this information and stuff like that. That just gives your argument a little bit more credibility. And neatly categorize your evidence, especially when it's applicable, when they're like, oh, I want this information per host. Well, okay, here's it divided by OS first, and then per host breakdown. Or, for example, stuff like uh, when there's a ton of stuff like, oh, these are all the forbidden users. Don't just give a big list of all the users that you found that were like, oh, haha, we yeeted all these users and just a big list, right? Um, yeah, so just that kind of stuff. Be neat. Um, use common sense when you're formatting your evidence, right? And forced vacations. This is so much fun. But hold up, vacation. That sounds good, right? Well, that was how it was described to us, and we were like, oh yeah, that sounds very exciting. That sounds very cool. Sounds like a decent thing to be doing. Well, it's not what you think. It's a forced vacation for a reason. So while you were initially struggling with your team, usually it comes at a really bad time too, because they would time it with red team. They're like, okay, um, release the wolves, and then they send us on this forced vacation at the same time. So then you are given this task to go present some sort of proposal to some sort of business executive or some sort of meeting. And so you're pulled from your room. Um, Not you specifically, but one person from your team is pulled from your room to attend this mandatory presentation. But the thing is, you don't just go present for 10 minutes and come back. No, they have everyone wait in the lobby at the same time, and so you're down there for like 2 hours waiting for everyone to finish their presentations before you can come back to your team. A lot of fun, I know, but they're also worth a lot of points, and they're important to get down if you want to be, you know, a well-rounded business person. So um, here's kind of a breakdown of what that usually looks like. So you got 1 hour to, create your slides, sometimes more, right? But you get your prompt and then you have to submit your slides. Your one objective. Your objective is to prove to people that you have done everything you can. This is your absolute best proposal, and this is absolutely what we should do. And you were really thorough with the thought process behind all of this stuff. And usually you're presenting to like C-suite, right? So using a ton of statistics, like costs and stuff like that, that really makes them happy usually. One big waste of time. No, I'm kidding. Well, I'm not kidding. You're down there for 2 hours and it's miserable, but it is a part of the competition. And, you know, it's starting to look a little bit better. There might be some changes around the horizon, but for now, this is really what the presentations are. They're not all that pretty, but they're important. So, how do you impress the judges? Well, for slides, you want to make sure that your slides, first of all, are organized, right? Don't put full sentences on your screen, right? Like, don't have your judges read while they're listening to you. Make sure that, everything that you have on your screen is cohesive. You don't really want to be saying 10 things at once and going all over the place and just confusing your judges. You also want to use a lot of graphics, right? Like they're reviewing like 10 presentations. You want to make sure that yours pops, right? Like they're able to watch your presentation, really retain the information that you are sharing, leave a strong impression, right? But also like just avoid having a ton of words on the screen and try to use graphics whenever you can. And finally, cite your sources, right? And mention them. Oh, this study done by like IBM, for example, blah 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 blah, says this, says that, or according to this, these are the numbers. Those things really add a level of credibility and confidence to your proposal, and the judges really feel that. Next, how you impress the judges, from a presentation standpoint. First of all, be loud. You're usually in a room with not only the judges, but other people too. It's a pretty big room, and so you want to make sure your voice projects and that, you come off as confident and well rehearsed, even though that's usually not the case, but, fake it till you make it, right? No fidgeting, please. The judges always point that out, but also just like think about it. When you're watching someone present and they're fidgeting a lot, you're just getting distracted. You're not actually paying attention to what they're saying. And you know, in a competition setting, that is not the best thing. You don't really want to leave that kind of impression with the judges, right? And finally, you gotta maintain eye contact with, the judges as best as you can. You want to really make sure that you're here for them and they know that, and that you have they have your full attention is what I was trying to say. You want to make sure that you're really locking in, getting to reach them. And that also, like for me personally, it helps with confidence. It feels more like a conversation than, oh no, I'm in this big room and I have to present this thing, right? And yeah, for now, we're gonna move on to reporting to your boss.
So for our lab this week, we're gonna practice submitting injects. They're going to be sent through the Bootcamp server in CCDC announcements and then submit them to Canvas, and it's going to be under assignments and in the labs portion. And we're also going to give you like a deadline or timeline of when you should submit each inject, and that's kind of just for your practice to see how you pace things. But they're going to be due at the end of the week as this week's homework as part of completion credit. So some tips we have are to use the submission template that's also going to be located in Canvas under assignments and labs. Be professional and use professional language and have neat formatting, and then be thorough and concise. So does anyone have questions about the lab before we move on?
Are these going to be released throughout the week, or are they just going to be released like in the next hour or so?
Yeah, like in the next, like for the rest of today's meeting, we're just gonna like send them out through the Discord announcements, but then everything's also going to be put up on Canvas. So if you miss them, then they'll all be there. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yes, we're gonna break everyone out into breakout rooms, and then this is kind of just so you can work together with other people if you have questions on any of the injects, but you will have to submit your own individual response to Canvas. And then one of the bootcamp instructors are gonna like occasionally check up on you guys, but you can always message us through here chatting or on Discord. So let me assign groups.